Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and I'm just here to do a quick little unscripted video. Well, if you're new to the channel or you're just finding me on Rumble, uh, you'll find out that when I say quick, I can actually mean not quick at all. So we'll see how long this one turns out. I just wanted to talk about DC for a little bit because, the new Superman movie is finally streaming on HBO Max and coming out on DVD and Blu-ray, and I wanted to talk about some of I guess, the status of James Gunn's DC universe. I want to start off, though, by saying I've given up watching Peacemaker season 2. I can't do it. I'm sorry. It's not good. And, you've probably heard a lot of people say that it's not good, but I'd like to start off with my primary reason. I have a couple of reasons why I don't like it, but the primary reason is a reason that plagues many streaming shows that do serialized storytelling. This show has more padding than a cargo ship full of Wonder Bras. You know how it goes, right? You're telling a serialized story, but you also have to fill every single episode that the network ordered. You have to meet that quota. You can't say, we know you ordered 10 episodes, but we can only stretch the story out to 7. Sorry about that. You have to meet them all or they're going to drop you. So the story pads itself out to stretch it longer than it really has any right to be. And this was a problem with the first season as well. Did we really need to spend almost an entire episode watching Peacemaker escape from an apartment complex? Probably not in terms of plot relevance, but in terms of making sure the story lasts that long, it had to be done, unfortunately. Same thing here. Do we really need to watch the Argus team driving from the base to Peacemaker's house? Well, there are two answers to that. The first answer is no, we obviously don't. The only thing we need to know is that they get there. The second answer is yes, if there's a plot relevant reason. Like, say, they have to get there within a certain amount of time, but something impedes them. So, in that case, it would be important to be in the car for at least a brief moment to see what holds them up. Or that time can be used to help the audience better understand the character dynamics. The show thinks it's doing stuff like that second one, but it's not. Partly because all of these characters talk the exact same way, and also partly because their interactions are all exactly the same. We already know how these characters interact. They don't like each other. They don't get along. We established that on the way to the car. We do not need it reinforced once we're in the car. So, yeah, that's a major problem for me as a writer. But then, of course, there's the bigger controversy. The fact that, for all intents and purposes, Peacemaker is X rated. May as well say it's triple X rated, given what happens in the first episode. And a lot of people, a shocking number of people actually, are kind of shocked by that. I'll get to that more in a moment, but I just want to say, first and foremost, as far as that mature content goes, I think it's gratuitous. Artists, if they want to make stuff that goes to certain places, yeah, they should have that right. Why not? But that doesn't always mean it's going to work, right? Just because you have the right to try something that's going to be a little bit more than what most audiences are expecting doesn't mean you're going to stick the landing. If you haven't seen the series, I may as well just warn you up front in case you are curious about it. The first episode ends with an orgy scene. And I'm not speaking metaphorically or hyperbolically. This is a full-blown orgy that is on display. And no, I am not showing you footage. Don't even ask again. So, yeah, even when the second episode provided a character-driven explanation for that scene to be there that I kind of suspected was supposed to be the case, it still felt gratuitous because, again, it's one of those scenes that's padded. It lasts a very long time. And all the slow motion, even like it wants you to be staring at the sheer display of debauchery that it's putting out there for you. And why is it so important that we see all of that exactly? I really can't think of a reason. Even the reason that was provided, that I kind of figured that, Chris is just trying to lose himself in some earthly pleasures and it's not working. Even that doesn't feel like it's enough of a justification. And then, of course, there's all of the foul language that, again, if that's how you want to write it, fine. But when every character is doing that and they're talking in the exact same way, it makes the dialogue uninteresting. I never thought I'd have to be applying the written by Vivzy Pop meme to something in the DC universe, and yet here we are. It's stuff like that. It's the kind of show that tried so hard to be mature that it circled back around to being childish. And yet it's absolutely not for children. It's not really for adults either. I don't know who it's for. This wasn't really an issue with Creature Commandos. It was kind of an issue with the first season of Peacemaker, but not quite to this extreme. But like I said, people are shocked by it. And why people are shocked, I mean, it's not because you're getting that sort of content on something that's playing on HBO Max and is rated TV mature. It's more that this is the follow-up to Superman. Superman, of course, the 2025 one, written and directed by James Gunn, is family friendly. It's PG-13, but it's a relatively safe PG-13. Violence that's no worse than watching a bunch of action figures smash into each other. Cursing, but nothing that would put it over the edge. Very little in the way of sexual content beyond just some innuendo. And it's got a cute puppy. Fun for the whole family. To go from that to orgy at Peacemaker's house, that is definitely a drastic jump. And people are going, what's the logic here? Why did James Gunn, who is in charge of DC right now, think it was a good idea to go from a family-friendly theatrical movie to a mature audience's streaming show? That is a good question, but I've been thinking about it, and I also kind of think it's the wrong question. See, let's step back a moment, and let's really consider, what is part of James Gunn's DC universe? Which things comprise it? Because DC's rebooted at this point. We're no longer in the Snyderverse. The season one retcons in the beginning of Peacemaker season 2 saw to that. But we also know that certain things that came before it are still canon. So what exactly counts? Well, we have obviously Superman. A lot of people are considering that the start. But we also have Peacemaker Season 2, by extension, Peacemaker Season 1, aside from those elements that were retconned. We have Creature Commandos, and we have the Suicide Squad. And yes, the Suicide Squad is considered canon because one of the biggest events in that movie keeps getting referenced in the series. And that's another part of the padding, but we were already past that. Now, of those titles, do you notice anything? Only Superman is the family-friendly one. Peacemaker, the Suicide Squad, Creature Commandos, those are all either R-rated or TV mature. So Superman is actually the odd one out here. And if we step back and look at an even bigger picture, not just of what's already come and what's currently airing, but what's planned for the future, we see that there's going to be even more stuff like that. The Clayface movie and the Swamp Thing movie that were announced are both going to be R-rated horror movies. If the Sergeant Rock movie ever gets off the ground, that'll probably be rated R because it's going to be a war movie. I've heard rumors that the Batman movie, not the Matt Reeves one, but whatever one is going to be part of this James Gunn DC universe, is also potentially going to be rated R. There's a Themyscira series that's in the works, which is going to be, again, an HBO Max series. And based on the fact that it is an HBO Max series and a line in Creature Commandos that may or may not be a joke, I see no reason why that won't be TV mature either. So it's looking like DC is kind of going more in an adults only direction as opposed to a family friendly one. Supergirl's probably going to be PG-13, sure. But at the moment, any family friendly works, any PG-13 works, are vastly outnumbered by the R-rated TV mature works. Now, some of you might hear that and say, well, this is just proof that James Gunn was the wrong man for the job. And look, we can debate how good of a job James Gunn is doing in another video, but again, let's step back even further and see the even bigger picture. James Gunn is definitely contributing to DC being a more adults only sort of franchise in movies and TV, but I do not believe he is the source of it. This has been happening for a while. If you look back through DC's history with the multimedia in particular, you'll actually see that the seeds for this were kind of started with their direct-to-video animated movies. The ones that started releasing in the late aughts, early 2010s. Starting in the late aughts. Because there were a couple of them connected to the Dark Knight trilogy, at least one. Now, those movies, when they started off, they were PG-13 as well, and PG-13 is still in that family-friendly zone, but these were the kind of PG-13 movies that really wanted you to know they were not the Saturday morning cartoons you might have grown up with. You know, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, the DCAU as a whole, they were very well done. They could be very mature in terms of theme and execution and everything, but they still had to play by the rules of being Saturday morning cartoons that were, technically speaking, aimed at kids. Not that adults can't watch and enjoy those things, but the primary audience that the networks were interested in were kids, right? So you couldn't really swear, couldn't have bloody violence, couldn't kill anyone, no weapons that can be found around the house, all those different restrictions that they had to work with. And the people who ran those shows worked around them very well. But when we get to these animated movies that can go PG-13, suddenly the violence is a little bit bloodier. The language is a little bit stronger. The sex appeal is cranked up ever so slightly. And as it keeps going, we do eventually get some R-rated ones. Again, revolving around the Suicide Squad, of course. And it was only a matter of time, really. They were going to go in that direction because the people making these things clearly wanted to go in that direction. And because these movies were doing well, eventually Warner Brothers looked around and said, okay, why not? We'll take a shot. We'll roll the dice. And those movies also wound up doing well. I mean, if you can watch them. I tried watching Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. Couldn't really get past the opening. I thought it was just trying too hard to be edgy. But, you know, apparently it did well enough that DC wasn't discouraged from continuing to greenlight more R-rated animated stuff, and neither was Warner Brothers. So that's kind of where it started. The Dark Knight trilogy, which I already mentioned, also was kind of similar, where technically they're PG-13, but if you look back, you'll see there's a lot of discussion in that time frame from online commentators about how the MPAA rating system was broken. It still is in a lot of ways, but as evidence of how broken it is, they frequently brought up the Dark Knight trilogy, the middle one, the Dark Knight in particular, saying it technically should have been R-rated given some of the stuff that's in there. But because they knew what to tone down, they managed to get away with a PG-13. Like the one body that drops down and hits the window. Originally, the note was supposed to be pinned to it with a knife. Instead, it's just held there with a paper clip. Apparently, that was enough to get past and around the R rating. But for all intents and purposes, it felt like it should have been R to a lot of people. When DC did have the opportunity to go R rated with Batman versus Superman, they chickened out. Because, well, while they were making it, they didn't know Deadpool was going to be a hit just yet. R rated superhero movies were considered a risk. And then, of course, when they released the R rated cut of Batman versus Superman on Blu ray, everyone pretty much agreed that was the superior version of the movie, even if initially they hadn't liked it. And even if they still didn't like it, I think they could at least say, well, it's better than the theatrical cut. Then, of course, when the streaming wars began, DC tried launching its own specific streaming platform, DC Universe. And there were two flagship titles for that, two original things that you were going to find there to draw in subscribers. The animated Harley Quinn series and the live-action Swamp Thing series, both of which, again, were TV mature. Swamp Thing only lasted one season, didn't get renewed when the platform was shut down and everything moved to HBO Max. Harley Quinn survived and lasted much longer, even as fewer people cared as it went on. But both of them really leaned into that TV mature idea. Again, some would say to the detriment of both shows, although I understand Swamp Thing had its fans. I tried watching the first episode, just couldn't do it. I'm sorry. It didn't feel right to me. And I'm a fan of Swamp Thing. I wanted to like it. But all the same, they were, again, leaning in that R-rated direction. Are you starting to see the pattern here? We can even look at the Matt Reeves Batman stuff. What's that being called? The Batman Epic Crime Universe or something? Is that still the official name? Doesn't matter. We can look at that and see that even that is still contributing to this overall idea of DC being mature audiences only. Because again, if you thought the Dark Knight trilogy were movies that should have been R-rated, the Batman gives that stuff a run for its money. I still don't know how it got away with not being R-rated, to be perfectly honest with you. Is it because they only said the F word once and not twice, which is what it would have put them over? Because if that's all that was holding it back, that seems ridiculous. Well, gee, we have severed human thumbs, dark nihilistic themes, drug usage, brutal beatings, and blood. But thank God there weren't two F-bombs dropped, or otherwise the kids wouldn't have been able to watch it. I still don't know how they got away with it. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic here, the Penguin series that spun off from it did lean into the R rating, went further than the movie did. But did you notice how nobody complained about that giving the audience tonal whiplash the way the Superman to Peacemaker transition went? That's because it wasn't tonal whiplash. It was still in the same vein. It just cranked it up a little bit more. And I'm just talking about the multimedia, mind you. I haven't even gotten to what's been going on in the actual comics and how Harley Quinn is basically just used for fetish material these days. So do you see why I initially said it was the wrong question to ask why James Gunn thought going from Superman to Peacemaker was a good idea? I'm more wondering why DC or Warner Brothers or anybody there is even still pretending. Like, who are they trying to kid at this point? They clearly, everyone who's there, everyone who's working at DC clearly wants to go in the R-rated direction, because there are so many examples of their different works that either go right up to the edge of being adults only or go over the edge and have no pretenses about it. So, again, why are they still pretending at this point? A part of me is thinking they should just go all in with doing R-rated DC. Mind you, I don't think that's a good idea. In fact, I think it would be a huge mistake. But that's clearly what they want to do, so who am I to stop them? They should at least get it out of their systems. But yeah, if they go in that direction, especially if they're going in that direction the way they've been going, I do think it will be a mistake, because eventually they're going to alienate everyone. Obviously, if they go all in with the R-rated, X-rated stuff, both in streaming and in theaters, they won't be able to get the younger audience, which is going to confuse a lot of families as to why. Like, can you imagine being a parent and having to explain to your kid why you can't bring them to see the latest Batman movie? Because Batman's their favorite superhero, and it's because of how R-rated it is. But like I said earlier, it's also the fact that based on what we're seeing, the tendency is to go so hard into mature territory that it winds up being immature. You want to be for adults only, but you do it so much to such an extreme that you lose the adults as well, but the kids can't watch it, so it's basically for nobody. If that's the direction DC is going, then yeah, we're not looking at a very bright future for this new universe under James Gunn. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, DC currently is in a very weird state of flux where, based on the material we've got at this point, there seems to be some internal struggle about who this universe is ultimately meant to be for. Is it for adults or is it for everyone? Right now, it's skewing in the direction of being only for adults. And if it's going to go in that direction, they better start being honest about it at the very least. Put aside the pretenses of, oh, we're going to release the PG-13 tentpole movie. Because if you keep doing that and then you fill in the gaps with a bunch of R-rated stuff, you're going to have a cinematic universe that only a certain portion of the audience that you rely on for the summer blockbuster season can actually see. So either commit to it or get things in line and decide who it's actually for. That's the ultimate advice I would have for DC at this point. Figure out who you're actually trying to get with these movies and make the movies for that audience, and figure it out soon, because you've only got so much time before people start losing interest in this the same way they've lost interest in Marvel. I guess we'll see what happens. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.